My phone vibrated against the wooden pew for the third time, just as Reverend Ransom began the closing prayer. I nearly ignored it. At New Covenant Baptist, people knew not to call me during service unless something was broken, burning, or bleeding. Most Sundays, I sat in the third pew from the front, left side, close enough to hear, without turning my hearing aids higher, and far enough from the choir that nobody expected me to sing. The first vibration had felt like impatience. The second felt like trouble. By the third, I slipped the phone from my handbag and lowered it beneath the church bulletin. My neighbor, Raymond Ellis, had sent 3 photographs. The first showed a white church van parked across the end of my driveway. The second showed 2 men carrying my dining room chairs through the side door. The third showed my green velvet settee tilted sideways between 3 volunteers as they tried to force it into the detached garage. I forgot the prayer. I knew that settee's frame better than I knew some members of my own family. The front rail was ash, the back was poplar, and the left rear joint had been repaired twice. Held at that angle, with one man lifting from the arm instead of beneath the frame, it could split before they crossed the threshold. I enlarged the photograph. Behind the men, my younger sister, Yvonne, stood with one hand raised, directing traffic as though she had been hired to supervise the move. My nephew Caleb was carrying a floor lamp toward the garage. For several seconds, I tried to fit what I saw inside some harmless explanation. Perhaps a pipe had burst. Perhaps Raymond had smelled smoke. Perhaps Caleb had arranged a surprise cleaning and forgotten to mention it. Then, another message appeared. They said you approved this. Thought you should know. Reverend Ransom said, Amen. The congregation answered. I remained seated long enough to place my phone back in my handbag without dropping it. Beside me, Beatrice Lawson closed her Bible and studied my face. Miss B had known me since we were girls in white gloves and patent leather shoes. At 72, she no longer believed in pretending not to notice anything. What is it? She whispered. Someone is moving my furniture. She glanced toward the rear of the sanctuary, where Caleb's usual seat near the outreach table stood empty. Who? My family, apparently. Miss B reached for her purse. I put a hand on her sleeve. You don't know where we're going yet. I know enough. The choir began the final hymn. People stood, gathering coats and greeting one another across the aisle. I slipped out through the side door before anyone could stop me to ask about funeral, potatoes, folding tables, or next Saturday's community breakfast. In the parking lot, I called the locksmith who handled the locks at my shop. Mr. Hanley, this is Odessa Carter. Yes, ma'am. I need the doors at my house rekeyed. There was a pause. Today? Now, if you're available. He asked whether I owned the house and whether anyone else legally lived there. I own it. I live alone. Nobody else has permission to enter. I can meet you in 20 minutes. Miss B had followed me outside. You're changing the locks before you ask what's happening. I saw what was happening. That is not what I asked. I looked at her. She pressed her lips together, but her eyes held approval. I need a witness, I said. Someone who can describe what she sees without adding thunder and lightning. I can be restrained. You have never been restrained. I can attempt it for Jesus. We drove separately because Miss B believed every emergency required her own transportation. The 12-minute drive from New Covenant to my house felt longer than the sermon. I passed the corner store, the elementary school, and the tire shop where Caleb had worked one summer before deciding his calling was people rather than machines. At a red light, I remembered him at 7 years old, sitting cross-legged on my shop floor and sorting upholstery tacks into metal cups. He used to ask permission before touching a fabric sample. At 36, he had apparently decided permission could be supplied afterward. When I turned onto my street, the white church van was still there. So were 2 pickup trucks. My front door stood open. A stack of dining chairs had been placed inside the garage beside paint cans, garden tools, and boxes of Christmas decorations. One of my customers' wingback chairs leaned against the concrete wall with its muslin underside exposed. My chest tightened. That chair belonged to a woman in Mountain Brook whose mother had nursed 4 babies in it. She had waited 8 months for my schedule to open. I had removed the damaged fabric, retied 2 springs, replaced the seat webbing, and ordered 6 yards of blue damask from North Carolina. Now it sat 3 feet from an oil-stained lawnmower. Caleb spotted my car first. "Aunt Dessa." He set down a cardboard box and walked toward me with both hands raised. "I was going to call you." "No, you were going to finish before I got home." Yvonne came out of my side door carrying 2 framed photographs. She wore the navy suit she had worn to church, but she had removed her heels and replaced them with old sneakers. "Odessa, don't start in front of everybody." I looked past her. 4 church volunteers stood in my dining room. One had his hands on the edge of my table, another held a roll of plastic wrap. "Put it down," I said. Nobody moved. "The table stays where it is." Caleb stepped closer. "We're not taking anything away. We're clearing the main rooms." "For whom?" He glanced at Yvonne. That glance told me the explanation had been rehearsed without me. "A family from our outreach list," he said. "The Hendersons. Their apartment caught fire Thursday night. The motel voucher ran out this morning." "And you brought them to my house?" "They're coming this afternoon." I turned to Yvonne. "Why are you holding photographs from my hallway?" "We needed to clear the walls so the children wouldn't knock anything down." "The children who are moving into my house." "Temporarily," she said. Caleb explained it. He did not. Miss B pulled into the driveway, parked behind the church van, and got out with her phone already in her hand. Yvonne looked at her and groaned. "Why did you bring B?" "Because people remember family arguments according to which family member they love." "I'm not getting in the middle," Miss B said. "I'm standing beside it with good eyesight." Caleb lowered his voice. "Aunt Dessa, can we talk inside?" "No one goes farther inside until I know exactly what you promised." The volunteers had begun looking at one another. I recognized all of them. 2 were deacons. 1 was a college student. The 4th was a young father I had once helped find a used crib. They were not thieves. They had come because Caleb told them they were doing church work. I faced them. "Gentlemen, I believe you were given incorrect information. Please stop moving anything. Leave every item where it is until I inspect it." One of the deacons, Mr. Powell, cleared his throat. "Sister Carter, we understood you had donated the use of the home." "I did not." He looked toward Caleb. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "It was discussed," he said. "With whom?" "With Mom, with Pastor. You've said plenty of times that an empty house ought to be useful." "My house is not empty. I live in it." "I meant the extra rooms." "My rooms are not extra because no one sleeps in them every night." Yvonne's face hardened. "Nobody said they were taking your house from you. You have that apartment behind the shop." I stared at her. The apartment behind Carter Furniture Restoration was barely more than a converted storage space. It had a small bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchenette I used when work ran late or a winter storm made the roads unsafe. "You think I'm moving into the shop?" "Only for a while." "Who decided that?" She shifted the photographs in her arms. "You've talked about it." "I said I might stay there during the kitchen renovation I may do next year." Caleb stepped between us. "Aunt Dessa, we can fix the details. The important thing is those children need somewhere safe tonight." The sentence landed exactly where he intended it to. For most of my life, if someone said a child needed something, I began listing what I could provide before asking who else had been called. Meals, beds, school clothes, rides, furniture. I had chaired New Covenant's hospitality ministry for 21 years, though I had only agreed to serve for 2. Caleb knew that. So did Yvonne. A van door slammed behind us. Mr. Hanley, the locksmith, stepped onto the driveway carrying a tool case. Caleb looked from him to me. "You called a locksmith?" "Yes." "You didn't even let me explain. You entered my house without asking. The explanation comes after the lock." His face changed then. Not guilt exactly. Hurt. I felt it in myself because I had loved that boy through skinned knees, bad grades, his parents' divorce, and the years when he mistook enthusiasm for discipline. I had paid for 2 community college classes after he lost a scholarship. I had attended every church program he organized, including one where only 6 people came and 4 of them were related to us. There are people you can be angry with cleanly. Caleb was not one of them. Mr. Hanley approached. "Miss Carter?" I met him at the porch and showed him my driver's license and a current property tax notice from the document pouch I kept in my car. He confirmed that no one else lived in the house and explained that he could rekey the front, side, and back doors. "1 key," I said. Yvonne folded her arms. "That is dramatic." "No. Dramatic is moving a woman's furniture while she's at church." Miss B made a sound that might have been agreement. I asked her to photograph each room and every item already placed in the garage. I took my own pictures, starting with the wingback chair. The left front leg had been dragged against the concrete, the raw wood showed a fresh scrape, and one brass caster was bent inward. A corner of the muslin had picked up a dark streak from the floor. I crouched beside it. Caleb followed me into the garage. "I'll pay for that." "You don't know what it costs." "Then tell me." "It is not only the cost of repair, it is a client's property in my care. She trusted me to protect something that belonged to her mother." His eyes moved across the exposed springs. "I didn't know that one wasn't yours." "You didn't ask." I checked the second customer chair. Its frame was intact, but a box of cleaning supplies had been placed on the loose fabric, leaving a damp ring. Then, I examined the green settee. The frame had survived, but the left rear joint had loosened. I pressed 2 fingers against it and felt movement where there should have been none. Yvonne came to the garage door. "We can put everything back." "You will, but not now, and not without my direction. We were trying to help somebody. You can help a person without helping yourself to my key." Her expression tightened. "You make everything sound ugly." "I am describing what happened." The locksmith worked while I sent the volunteers home. Mr. Powell apologized twice. The younger men looked embarrassed and eager to escape. Caleb asked them to stay and put everything back. I said no. "If you keep moving things today, embarrassment will be doing the lifting. I need the damage recorded before anything changes." Miss B raised her eyebrows, but she kept taking photographs. When the last volunteer left, the house looked as though someone had stopped halfway through erasing me. My books had been boxed. The lamps were gone. The framed photographs had been removed. The sofa cushions were stacked in the hallway. My dining table remained because I had arrived before they could carry it out. On the kitchen counter, I found rolls of paper towels, cleaning supplies, children's cereal, and a plastic package containing 2 new toothbrushes. The sight of those toothbrushes troubled me more than the empty walls. A real family had been preparing to come. Not a theoretical family from an outreach report. A mother had told her children they would sleep somewhere safe because my nephew had promised it. Reverend Ransom called before the locksmith finished. "Odessa, I heard there's been a misunderstanding." "No, Reverend. There has been an unauthorized move." He drew a slow breath. "Caleb told me you had offered the house as transitional housing. Did you hear me offer it?" "No." "Did you call me to confirm?" "I believed he had handled that." "You believed wrong." "What has been moved?" "Most of my living room, part of my dining room, and 2 customer chairs from my shop." His tone changed at the mention of customer property. I did not know church volunteers were handling business inventory. Neither did I. "I'm sorry. I should have verified the arrangement myself." That was better than concern dressed as diplomacy, but it did not solve anything. "What are the Hendersons supposed to do tonight?" he asked. It was the question everyone would eventually ask me. Not Caleb, not Yvonne, me. "I don't know yet." "You've changed the locks?" "Yes." That closes one option. It was never an option until someone invented my consent. He was quiet for a moment. "Would you allow the family to stay for 1 week while we arrange something else?" I looked at my dismantled living room. A week was how permanent arrangements introduced themselves when they knew you would reject 6 months. "No." "Could you pray about it?" "I was at church when they moved my furniture." He did not answer. "I will meet with you this afternoon," I said. "We need somewhere safe for the Henderson family, and it will not be my house." After the locks were changed, I paid Mr. Hanley and placed the single new key in my handbag. Yvonne watched me. "You don't trust me with one? You gave away the last one." Her mouth opened, then closed. Caleb looked at her. "You gave me the key," he said, almost as though the fact had only now gained weight. "You asked for it. You told me Aunt Odessa would come around." "She usually does." The words hung between us. Yvonne turned away first. Before dealing with the church, I called the owner of the damaged wingback chair. Her name was Helen Warren. "I need to tell you something before you see the chair," I said. I explained that the chair had been moved from its protected work area without my permission and that the caster, leg finish, and underside fabric had been damaged. "Was it stolen?" she asked. "No, it never left my property." "Then who moved it?" "That is my responsibility to address. The repair will cost you nothing, and I will send photographs before I begin." She was quiet. "I brought it to you because people said you were careful." "I am. That is why I am calling before I touch the damage." She asked for a revised completion date. I added 2 weeks. She was not pleased, but she agreed. When the call ended, I stood in my kitchen and allowed myself to feel the consequence. My family's decision had entered my business. An apology at church would not recover the lost time or explain why a client's heirloom had been placed beside a lawnmower. At 2:30, a grey minivan stopped at the curb. A woman stepped out wearing jeans, a cream sweatshirt, and the exhausted expression of someone who had answered too many questions from strangers. 2 children sat in the back seat among plastic storage bins, backpacks, and tied garbage bags. Caleb whispered, "That's Tasha." I felt a sudden wish to disappear into the house and let him explain what he had done. Instead, I walked down the driveway. "Tasha Henderson?" She studied me. "You're Miss Carter?" "Yes." Her eyes shifted toward the furniture in the garage, then toward Caleb. "Is something wrong?" Caleb approached. "We're working through a change." "What change?" I answered before he could. I did not agree to let anyone move into my home. The boy in the back seat leaned forward. The younger girl stared out the window. Tasha's face emptied. "Caleb said you were moving into your business apartment." "I am not." He showed me pictures of the bedrooms. I looked at Caleb. He looked at the pavement. Tasha opened the passenger door and pulled out a blue folder. "This is what the church gave me." Inside was a printed welcome packet with New Covenant's logo at the top. It listed my address, Caleb's phone number, emergency contacts, and basic household expectations. No smoking. No overnight visitors. Children enrolled in school within 10 days. Estimated stay, up to 6 months. There were photographs of my guest room and the smaller bedroom I used for sewing. Beneath them, a paragraph described the apartment behind my shop as my new private residence. I read it twice. Someone had written my future as though it were a church announcement. I handed the packet back to Tasha. "I'm sorry this was given to you." She stared at Caleb. "You told me she wanted to do this." "I believed she would." "That is not what you said." "I was trying to keep your family out of another motel." So you let me tell my children we had a home. Her voice never rose. That made it harder to hear. Caleb took a step toward her. I will fix it. You keep saying that after you decide things for other people. She turned to me. I won't bring my children into a house where we weren't invited. You should not. Yvonne came down the driveway. Tasha, we can work this out. Odessa is upset right now. I looked at my sister. Tasha does not need you to explain my feelings. The little girl opened the van door. Mum, are we staying here? Tasha closed her eyes for a moment. No, baby, not tonight. I asked where they had stayed since the fire. A motel near the interstate. The Red Cross covered 2 nights, and the church covered 1. Checkout was this morning. What happened to your apartment? Kitchen fire in the unit downstairs, smoke damage, water, part of the ceiling. The landlord says at least 2 months, maybe more. Do you have family nearby? My mother's in Mobile caring for my grandmother. My sister has 4 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. I nodded. Give me 1 hour. She looked wary. I am not asking you to wait for my house. I am asking you to let me find out what the church actually has. Caleb said, Aunt Dessa. I held up my hand. You have done enough promising today. Tasha returned to the van. I called Reverend Ransom and told him to meet us at New Covenant. The church office felt different on Sunday afternoon. Without music, ushers, and people greeting one another, the building became what it also was: rooms, keys, budgets, maintenance problems, and decisions someone had postponed. Reverend Ransom sat behind his desk. Caleb stood near the window. Yvonne took the chair beside me without asking. Tasha remained in the hallway with her children and Miss B, who had bought them sandwiches. I placed the welcome packet on the pastor's desk. Did you approve this? He read the first page. I approved creating a transitional housing packet. For my house? No. I was told the location was settled. Caleb spoke quickly. I should have confirmed. You did more than fail to confirm, I said. You confirmed something that was not true. I believed Mom had discussed it with you. Yvonne shifted. I told him you had talked about using the house for ministry. I said, 3 years ago, that the church needed a proper emergency housing program. You also said you had more house than you needed. That was after I spent a Saturday cleaning 3 bedrooms by myself. It was a complaint, not a donation. Reverend Ransom rubbed his forehead. We need an immediate solution. The church can cover several more motel nights, but that does not solve the next month. What about the parsonage? I asked. He looked up. The small house behind the church had been vacant since the associate pastor moved away 8 months earlier. It needs work. What kind? Cleaning, maybe plumbing. The power is off. Is it insured? Yes. Any major structural problems? Not that I know of. Then we do not know enough to promise it, either. I called a licensed home inspector I had used when restoring furniture for rental property owners. He could inspect the parsonage Monday morning if the utilities were turned on first. The church treasurer authorized 3 motel nights from the emergency fund after Reverend Ransom called her. That covered Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, while the parsonage was inspected and repaired. Tasha accepted the motel only after the pastor confirmed the church would pay directly and that no one expected her to perform gratitude in front of the congregation. Her phrase, not mine. I liked her for it. Before she left, I asked what furniture she had lost. Most of it, she said. The children's mattresses, the sofa, kitchen table. What can be cleaned? I don't know. When the apartment is released, call me before anyone throws things away. Smoke damage is not always the end of a piece. She nodded, but she did not smile. Trust had been mishandled too many times that day. That evening, after the church office emptied, I returned to my shop. Carter Furniture Restoration occupied an old brick storefront my father had rented in 1968. I bought the business from him when arthritis took his hands and pride nearly took the rest of him. At 68, I still worked 4 days a week, though customers often assumed any grey-haired woman holding a staple puller was helping her husband. The shop smelled of wood dust, cotton batting, and the citrus cleaner I used on finished pieces. I switched on the overhead lights. Yvonne followed me inside. "I thought you went home," I said. "I need to talk to you." "You had all day." "You were performing all day." I turned. "For whom?" "For B, for the locksmith, for the church. You believe I changed the locks for an audience. I believe you wanted everybody to see Caleb was wrong." "He was wrong." "That does not mean you had to make him small." I set my handbag on the work table. "Did you give him my key?" She looked toward the fabric shelves. "Yes." "Did he tell you he intended to move my furniture while I was at church?" "He said it would be easier if the work was done before you got back." "And you agreed." "I knew you would say no if he asked too soon." I waited. She drew a breath. "But I also knew you would not put those children out once they arrived." There it was. Not confusion. Calculation. You plan to use their need against me. We plan to solve a problem. With my house. You are one person in a 3-bedroom home. And that makes my rooms available? It makes the situation different. Different from what? From a family sleeping in a car. I leaned against the work table. "Yvonne, I would have helped." "Then why are we fighting?" "Because help offered freely is not the same as help cornered out of someone." She shook her head. "You always say yes, eventually." The sentence hurt because it was true. Not always, but often enough that people had begun treating my first answer as a delay rather than a decision. I had trained them to wait me out. I had also trained myself to enjoy the part that came after surrender, when everyone praised me for saving the day. "You thought I would object, so you arranged things where objection would look cruel," I said. Yvonne's eyes filled, though her chin remained firm. "I thought once you saw those children, you would remember what we were taught." "I remember. Do you remember being taught not to take what has not been offered?" "I did not steal your house. You took my chance to choose." She looked away. For the first time, I saw that she was frightened. "Not of me. For Caleb. He has worked hard for that outreach position," she said. "People finally respect what he can do. Then he should learn to do it without spending other people's lives." He made one mistake. He created documents, took photographs, arranged volunteers, and gave a family my address. He was under pressure. From whom? He told donors the family would be housed by Sunday. Reverend Ransom has been talking about making the outreach role full-time. Caleb wanted to prove he was ready. So he needed a miracle. He needed a solution. And he decided I would provide both. Yvonne sat on a stool near the cutting table. "I should have called you." "Yes." "I should not have given him the key." "No." She looked up, irritated. "You could make it easier to apologize. I have made too many difficult things easy for both of you." The words came out sharper than I intended. Yvonne had not been nothing to me. She had driven me home after cataract surgery. She had brought soup when influenza kept me in bed. She handled our mother's paperwork during the last year of her life because I could not bear to watch the woman who taught me upholstery forget my name. Love existed between us. That was why the key had been in her kitchen drawer. "I am not saying you have never helped me," I said. "I am saying helping me did not make you authorized to decide for me." Her shoulders lowered. "What happens to Caleb?" "That depends on Caleb. You could protect him. I have protected him. He could lose the position. He may not be ready for it." Yvonne stood. "You sound as though you do not care what that would do to him." "I care. I also care what he did to Tasha." She left without another word. The parsonage inspection began at 8 Monday morning. The house was dusty but sound. The water heater needed servicing, 2 smoke alarms were missing, and an outlet in the back bedroom showed heat damage. The inspector recommended an electrician before occupancy. The church could have ignored those things and called the house a blessing. I would not. I walked through each room with a legal pad. The living room needed curtains, lamps, and seating. The dining room held an old maple table with a loose pedestal and 6 chairs with cracked vinyl seats. The children's bedroom had 2 metal bed frames but no mattresses. The kitchen appliances worked once the utilities were restored. Caleb arrived 20 minutes late, carrying coffee. I brought you one. I have coffee. He set it on the counter anyway. What do you need me to do? Call the electrician from the approved list. Arrange smoke alarms. Confirm the insurance requirements. Then meet Tasha and ask what she needs before you purchase anything. I can handle that. You said that yesterday. His jaw tightened. I let the sentence remain. An older version of me would have softened it immediately. I might have touched his arm, added that I believed in him, or taken half the tasks back so he would not feel overwhelmed. Instead, I handed him the list. I will handle the furniture assessment, I said. Reverend Ransom will handle the motel and utilities. You will handle the repairs and written confirmations. No one person is carrying this. By noon, 6 volunteers had arrived. This time, I knew their names, their assignments, and what they had been told. No one touched private property without clear permission. No one posted photographs. No one promised a completion date to Tasha without confirming it with the electrician and inspector. At my shop, I selected 2 sturdy armchairs that clients had donated for community use. I rejected a sagging sofa someone left behind the church because the frame had cracked beneath the center rail. It looks fine, Caleb said. It looks fine to someone who will not have to sit on it every day. I pressed my knee against the front edge. The frame flexed. Need is not permission to give people whatever nobody else wants. He looked at the sofa differently after that. We found a clean used couch through a church member, bought new mattresses with emergency funds, and repaired the dining chairs rather than replacing them. Tasha joined us Tuesday morning. She brought measurements from the children's room and asked whether she could paint one wall after they moved in. It will be your home while you are there, I said. You should have a say in it. She studied me. Caleb said 6 months. The church needs to make an agreement with you based on the repairs to your apartment and what both sides can responsibly provide, not on somebody's guess. I do not want charity held over me. Then the agreement should say what the church provides and what it does not. It should also say how privacy works. Reverend Ransom, standing nearby, nodded. Tasha said, and no photographs of my children for fundraising. Agreed, the pastor said. Caleb wrote it down. Tasha turned to me. Would you have helped if he asked you? The question was fair. Yes. With your house? I don't know. Probably not for 6 months. Perhaps for a few nights while something else was arranged. But I cannot honestly tell you what I would have chosen because he took the choice before I made it. She accepted that. Later, while we recovered the dining chairs with washable fabric, Caleb worked across the table from me. He was clumsy with the staple gun. Keep your wrists straight, I said. I am. You are not. He adjusted it. After several minutes, he said, I thought you would say no because you were afraid of being inconvenienced. I was afraid of losing control of my home. That sounds the same. It is not. He pulled a crooked staple and tried again. I wanted those kids somewhere stable. I know. I did not do it for money. I know. I did not want your house. I know. He looked up. Then why are you treating me like I am some kind of criminal? Because you keep describing your motive as though it cancels your method. He dropped his gaze to the chair seat. I thought if you saw them, you would help. You thought if I saw them, I could not refuse. He did not deny it. That is not faith in my goodness, Caleb. That is confidence in my guilt. The staple gun rested between us. He whispered, I did not think of it like that. I believe you. That did not absolve him. It did make him human. The emergency church council meeting was scheduled for Tuesday evening. By then, the electrician had completed the necessary work. The water heater had been serviced. The parsonage was expected to pass its final safety check Wednesday morning, allowing Tasha's family to move in that afternoon. The immediate crisis was almost solved. That made the council meeting more dangerous for me. When people can see a problem ending, they become eager to smooth over how it began. The council met in the fellowship hall. 12 members sat around 2 tables pushed together. Reverend Ransom opened with prayer. Yvonne sat behind Caleb, though she was not on the council. Miss B sat near the wall as my witness. Tasha came because the welcome packet had used her name and her children's circumstances. She left the children with a friend. Reverend Ransom summarized the facts. Caleb had represented that I approved transitional use of my home. Yvonne had supplied a key. Volunteers moved furniture without my direct consent. The church had acted on information it failed to verify. His language was careful, but it did not hide his own part. Then Deacon Harris asked the question I knew was coming. Since the parsonage has not passed the final check yet, would Sister Carter consider allowing the Henderson family to use her home for 30 days? That would give us time to finish everything properly and avoid unnecessary motel expense. Several heads nodded. A woman across from me said, It could turn an unfortunate incident into something good. There it was again. My house as the instrument through which everyone else's discomfort could be redeemed. I looked at Caleb. He kept his eyes on the table. If I said yes, the congregation would praise me before the meeting ended. Caleb might keep his promotion. Yvonne would relax. Tasha's children could leave the motel one day earlier. I could become the generous Odessa everyone recognized. And every person in that room would learn that moving my furniture without permission had worked. I folded my hands. I need to say something about my part in this. Yvonne looked up. For many years, when New Covenant needed a meal, a bed, a ride, a repaired chair, or somebody to stay late, I answered before I asked what it would cost me. I have said things like, I'll make room, and leave it with me. I liked being dependable. More than that, I liked being known as indispensable. No one interrupted. That pride belongs to me. I should have stated my limits before I became resentful. I should have allowed other people to solve problems without stepping in every time. I should not have expected people to understand boundaries I never spoke clearly. Reverend Ransom nodded. Yvonne's eyes softened. Then I continued. But vague generosity did not give anyone permission to copy my key, enter my house, move my property, photograph my rooms, damage customer furniture, or promise that I would live somewhere else. My failure to say no often enough is not the same as saying yes. The woman across the table looked down. I turned to Tasha. What happened to your family was wrong. What happened at my house was also wrong. Repairing one wrong by completing the other would not make this church more generous. Deacon Harris shifted in his seat. So your answer is no? My answer is no. The Henderson family will not stay in my house. The words cost me more than I expected. I knew which women would call me stubborn. I knew which men would say I cared too much about furniture. I knew Yvonne might leave without speaking to me. Some part of me still waited for disappointment to become rejection. Reverend Ransom asked, What do you believe accountability should look like? Miss B leaned forward. I knew what she wanted. Permanent removal. A public apology from the pulpit. Perhaps a thunderbolt if one could be scheduled. I looked at Caleb. He had hurt me, but I did not want his life ruined. I wanted him to become the kind of man who could be trusted with other people's emergencies. I cannot endorse Caleb for the full-time outreach position right now, I said. Ivan made a small sound behind him. Caleb finally looked at me. I will not ask the church to remove him permanently, but he should not lead a ministry built on consent until he understands it. He should correct what he told Tasha and what he told this council. He should complete the work at the parsonage under supervision. He should contribute to the documented repair costs at my home and shop. And before he returns to leadership, the church should establish rules for the use of private homes, vehicles, money, photographs, and professional services. Reverend Ransom asked Caleb whether he wanted to respond. He stood slowly. I thought Aunt Dessa would agree once she saw the family. His voice shook, but he continued. She did not give me permission. My mother gave me the key, but I asked for it knowing Aunt Dessa had not said yes. I told Tasha the house was available because I had promised she would be housed by Sunday, and I was afraid to admit I did not have a place. He turned toward Tasha. I let you tell your children something I had not earned the right to promise. Tasha watched him without rescuing him. I am sorry, he said. She answered, Then do not make me carry your shame for you. Fix the program. He nodded. Reverend Ransom suspended Caleb from directing outreach for 3 months and postponed consideration of the full-time position. The council approved written consent procedures, reimbursement for the flooring and customer chair damage, and a review of how emergency promises were authorized. No one applauded. I was grateful. Accountability did not need an audience cheering for one side. Tasha and her children moved into the parsonage Wednesday afternoon after the final safety check. The girl chose the bedroom with the yellow curtains. Her brother helped Caleb assemble the bed frames. Tasha signed an occupancy agreement that protected her privacy, prohibited unauthorized photographs, and included a monthly review based on the repair timeline for her apartment. I brought over 2 lamps and a repaired rocking chair. Only after she asked. At my own house, the furniture returned slowly. I supervised every piece. Caleb and Yvonne carried the dining chairs back first, then the bookcases, then the lamps. The church paid Helen Warren's repair costs, but I completed the work myself and did not charge for my time. Caleb came to the shop twice after work to clean the caster, sand the damaged leg under my supervision, and replace the stained muslin. When Helen collected the chair, she ran her fingers over the repaired finish. I cannot see where it happened, she said. I can show you. That is all right. It matters that you know. I turned the chair slightly and showed her the repaired section beneath the apron. She nodded. You told me before I had to discover it. That matters too. The green settee stayed at my shop because the rear joint required a deeper repair. Yvonne came by the following Thursday while I was removing the upholstery from its back. She stood near the doorway. Need help? I almost said no. That answer had become another habit, refusing help until people assumed I required nothing, then resenting them for believing me. You can pull staples, I said. She put on an apron and took the second staple remover. For an hour, we worked without discussing the key, the church, or Caleb. Then she said, I was jealous of you. I stopped. Of what? You always had something that was yours. The shop, the house, the church acted like you could fix anything. I spent years being somebody's wife, then somebody's mother, then the person who worried whether Caleb would finally find his place. You think that made my house available? No. I think it made it easier for me to tell myself you did not need it the way somebody else did. I looked at the exposed wooden frame between us. You could have asked what I needed. I thought I knew. That has been our problem since 1979. She laughed once. In 1979, she had borrowed my white pantsuit without permission and returned it with red punch on the sleeve. Some family arguments do not repeat exactly. They grow older with the people having them. Over the next 3 months, Caleb worked at the parsonage every Saturday. He created a written intake process with Tasha and 2 other church members. He stopped presenting emergency families during services without their permission. He built a list of motel partners, landlords, storage companies, and church members willing to offer specific forms of help. Specific became an important word. Not, call me anytime. Not, whatever you need. 2 rides a month. 1 furnished room for 3 nights. 4 hours of childcare with 48 hours notice. A dining table, not an entire household. People became more dependable when they knew exactly what they had agreed to carry. Reverend Ransom asked me to remain hospitality chair. I declined. I will serve on scheduled projects, I said. I am not holding the emergency phone anymore. He looked surprised. Who will? Someone the church appoints, perhaps several people. For years, I had believed stepping back would reveal how unnecessary I was. Instead, 3 women volunteered to divide the work. One was better at meal coordination than I had ever been. Another kept records with a precision I admired. The third knew every affordable motel within 20 miles. The ministry did not collapse without me. It became less dependent on one person's exhaustion. I changed my shop schedule too. Every Thursday afternoon, I locked the front door and worked on pieces that belonged to me. Sometimes I restored furniture, sometimes I read. Once, I drove to the botanical gardens and stayed until closing. The first few Thursdays felt irresponsible. By the 6th, they felt like an appointment I intended to keep. Tasha's apartment repairs took longer than expected. She and the children stayed in the parsonage for 5 months. During that time, she helped New Covenant revise the emergency housing program, though she refused any title that made her story church property. After Caleb's 3-month suspension ended, he returned only as a supervised volunteer. When Tasha moved back to her apartment 2 months later, the council reviewed whether he should resume a formal outreach role. I did not make the decision. That mattered. I had withdrawn my endorsement. I did not replace the council's judgment with my own. Tasha supported his return in a limited part-time position. He listens now, she said. Not perfectly, but before he offers something, he checks whether it belongs to him. The full-time position remained unfilled. Caleb came to my shop one afternoon and stood beside the green settee, now repaired and ready to return home. Can I ask you something? He said. You just did. He smiled. Do you still think of me like a son? I set down my scissors. I never had a son, Caleb, so I cannot tell you exactly what that means. I know I love you. I know your choices can hurt me more than most people's. And I know loving you does not make me responsible for protecting you from every consequence. He nodded. I kept thinking you would come around. I did come around. To what? To saying what I meant the first time. He ran one finger near the repaired joint, but did not touch it. I am sorry, Aunt Odessa. I know. I did not tell him everything was fine. The settee was not fine because the crack had disappeared. It was usable because the frame had been opened, cleaned, fitted, glued, clamped, and given time to hold. Yvonne helped me bring it home. We carried it through the front door, one hand beneath each end, the frame level between us. In the living room, she paused. Where do you want it? It was a small question. Once, she would have assumed. Once, I might have let her. By the window, I said. Turned slightly toward the fireplace. She waited until I guided my end. Together, we lowered it into place. The new joint was stronger than the old one, but I could still find the repair if I ran my fingers beneath the fabric. That is the truth about restoration. Good work does not pretend damage never happened. It makes a piece useful again, without lying about what had to be mended. On Thursday afternoons, I sometimes sit on that green settee with the shop closed and my phone in the other room. People still call when a chair collapses, a family needs a meal, or a room must be made ready. Before I answer, I ask what belongs to me, what has actually been requested, and who has agreed to carry the rest. An unused room is not an invitation. Neither is a capable woman.